Hey everyone, we're back with another Q&A with National Master Matt Jensen. And today we are going through questions that are a bit more involved and we wanted to give a full answer to. So I gave these ones to him earlier. And if you want to check out the video of questions that I kind of just sprung on him in the moment, you can check out our last Q&A video. Ready to jump in?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, cool. First question comes from our Discord member Chess Priom. He asks, thought process. How do you determine your next move?
Yeah, this is a great question, Chess Priom. So what I did for this was I threw it into a little Google drawing to try to explain my thought process. But one thing I realized, it's very hard to put it on paper exactly how I determine my next move. But I'll try to break it down here. So the first thing I always look at is the evaluation of the position. So I'm constantly thinking about what's the eval. And this is something that I like to do with my students as well. I'll quiz them. What do you think the eval is in this position? Like, we'll guess. And they'll say, oh, maybe it's like 1 pawn advantage for white. And I'll say, well, it might be 2.5 pawn advantage according to Stockfish. And then we'll check it with the engine, see what the eval is. So I'm always constantly evaluating. And sometimes I think of it in terms of a Stockfish eval, like number of centipawns or pawns. Other times I will just think of it in terms of like slight advantage, clear advantage, should be completely winning, etc. But that's sort of like my board awareness, I think of it as, like just trying to be aware of everything on the board and who's better. Next, I like to look at the complexity of the position. What this means is I want to know how easy is it for me to make moves without making a mistake. And then the same for my opponent. And then also just sort of an overall picture, like for both sides, is this a complex position or is it a pretty simple position where everything is solid? The reason I want to know those two things, if you look over here on the right, I drew this little bar. The white section of the bar, so let's pretend we're playing the white pieces. The white section of the bar is a win for white as the result. The gray section is a draw, and the black section is a win for black. So every position has an eval. That's this horizontal black line. And it has what I call a variance, which is this vertical red line. So essentially what you want to happen is you want the eval to move up into the range where you are going to win the game. So when you're already winning the game, it's advantageous to shrink this variance bar. You want to make the variation of the possible outcomes of the game small. And that's a very mathematical way to think about it. But what you're doing there is like when people say you should trade pieces when you're up. What that means is you want to simplify the position because you're already in a spot where you should win the game. So I'm always thinking about that. If I'm completely winning, more often than not, I am just trying to limit what my opponent can do. I'm trying to take their chances of winning from like 1% down to 0%. I'm more focused on that than trying to, let's say, win their material or think too deeply about my own plans. I am just trying to do risk management. Now, on the other side, let's say this eval bar is way down here. My opponent's really beating me. Maybe they're up like 5 points of eval. Then what I want to do is I want to take this variance bar and I want to make it massive. So maybe it makes my position worse, where they're just completely winning, like off the charts down here. But also, it gives me a chance to make the position messy and get some winning chances. So when I'm completely lost, I'm looking to make things messy. I want both sides to have a lot of chances to make blunders because maybe the blunders happen to my opponent and that gets me right back into the game. Is this making sense so far, Jesse?
Yeah, totally.
So it's kind of like a mean and standard deviation in statistics. It's like risk management and other areas. So then the next thing let's talk about is, okay, so knowing that, how do you select your move? So like the position evaluation part, I'm always trying to keep a board awareness. That happens every single move. I'm always thinking about things sort of in the back of my mind. And I really like to think about the position in terms of imbalances. So a really good book on that is Jeremy Silman's Reassess Your Chess. I love that book. I think of positions very closely to how he describes imbalances. So I'm looking at weak squares, weak pieces, king safety, the pawn structure, pawn weaknesses. I really look at piece imbalances quite a bit, like bad bishops in particular. I like to take advantage of a bad bishop. I like the bishop pair. I like knight outposts. And I always look for exchange sacrifices too. Like if a bishop or knight can be more active than a rook, I might sacrifice the exchange just to create that imbalance if I feel it's got good winning chances. And then kind of keeping an eye on the different threats for both sides. So that's all part one, board awareness. Next thing I look for is immediate tactics in the position. And a lot of players jump to number 2 on this list. They just start looking for tactics. I really like to kind of have this position of control first. I make my pieces as good as possible, my pawns, keep my king safe, create weaknesses in the opponent's camp, and then I'm looking more for tactics out of those positions. So I try to play from a position of strength if possible. Number 3, initiative and piece mobility. That again kind of comes back to controlling the game. So if there's not any immediate tactics, I'm looking to start to probe my opponent's position. I'm trying to poke at them a bit. If you've seen our Carol Khan course, we're constantly trying to like attack weak pawns and look for those types of things. We try to dictate the play, have the initiative, because I think it's just more likely that the opponent blunders if you play with the initiative. And then finally comes the sort of nitty-gritty of picking the moves. I like to look for multiple candidate moves, and this really depends on the time control. In a classical game, I might be looking at 3, 4, 5 candidate moves. In a 3+0 game, maybe it's only 1 or 2. But essentially, I'll take the first candidate move, and I will start going down the path, looking at it, checking tactics, and if it looks good, and I don't have a lot of time on the clock, I will just go with that. When the moves don't look good, that's when I move on to the next candidate move. So I kind of have this process in my head. Really, it works best in classical, I think, or maybe a slower rapid game. And just kind of working your way down the list, going through all those candidate moves until one looks good. I don't always look for a better move if one of the first candidate moves already looks good. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but that's how I think about the position, and that's how I determine which moves to make.
No, that's an amazing analysis. Brought to you by a statistician. You can tell by the variance bar. I love it. One question I had is with the in the second scenario you're talking about with increasing the variance. What are the types of things you can do to make a position messy or to increase the variance?
Great question. I like to think of it in terms of changing the board state. So let's say you have pawns all locked up in the position. Maybe you sacrifice a pawn, or maybe you look to trade some pieces that creates a different imbalance. Because sometimes what'll happen is you're in a worse position and everything is very symmetric or it's solid and it's just too easy for your opponent to play. It's not complex. I will look for ways to just spice things up, even if it's at the cost of sacrificing material. So look for aggressive moves, look to kind of change up the pawn structure or create new piece imbalances. Oh, and another one is expose your opponent's king if possible. That's something where if you can create a weak king in your opponent's camp, even if it costs you in some other areas, that can definitely help you get some tactics in your favor later.
Yeah, I like that. I found sometimes when I have like a rook that's not in the game or something like that, it's sometimes easier just to sacrifice the exchange and take the material imbalance. And then you make the position more difficult for your opponent to play because they can't just like pile up on your weakness. They have to find something else to do next. And I feel like a lot of people panic when they can't find an immediate plan and they maybe drop a pawn or leave a piece hanging or something like that.
Yeah, and this is something like when I play players that are a couple hundred points higher than me, it's so hard to beat them for this reason. They're very resourceful and they'll look for ways to make it really difficult to win, make you think about a lot of different tactics, and that's when you make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Tough players are tough.
Yeah.
It's like grandmasters. Like it's so hard. Have you heard the phrase? You have to beat a grandmaster twice. Like you have to both get a position and then actually convert it.
Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah. All right, we can go to the next question. It's kind of similar to the last one. So this was by Retro in the Discord. They ask, how do you determine a move when down a lot of material?
Yeah, that's a great question. I look to attack. And not only when you're down a lot of material, it's also really good, I think, if you're playing an opponent who's a few hundred points stronger than you. Like an opponent that's so much stronger that you don't think you can beat them, maybe with just like a normal solid game, because they're just going to outplay you. Look to make those games messy as well, because there's better chances that your opponent will mess up. So I would say just play very aggressive, um, more so than you would with an equal position or an equal opponent.
So good advice there. I feel like whenever I play someone a lot higher rated than me, I am hyper aware of all their threats just so I don't like blunder something easy.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that just gives them a really easy game.
And your opponent can sense that too, right? If they see you, especially OTB, they see you getting nervous, looking at all the threats, they can definitely play off of that a bit and try to even bluff at you a little bit, right? Like you think there's tactics there, but there aren't, and they might give you too much respect.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Did you have anything else on that one? Determine to moving down a lot of material?
Um, no, I don't really think so. I think it's kind of both of those questions are linked. Yeah, try
Yeah.
to increase the variance is the main thing.
Yeah, I like that. Thinking in those terms, like increase the variance in the position just to make it messy.
Yeah.
So Bird Cell on another one from our Discord. He asks, "What was your path to National Master like?"
This is a really good question too. I wasn't sure how deep to go on this one. I didn't want to put people to sleep, but I also wanted it to be a bit informative. So this was sort of what I settled on. I started playing at age 5, and I began playing USCF at age 6. At the time, I was rated around 900. This sounds more impressive than it was at the time. Back then, there really wasn't anyone lower rated than me. So I was 900, but I was losing every single game. Most players were over 1,000 back then. So I started out playing locally around age 6. I had a coach named Bob who kind of taught me the basics, taught me some end games, basic strategic concepts. And I really just took to the game. So age 7 through 9, kind of elementary age, I started playing up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I live like an hour and a half south of Minneapolis. Not a huge chess scene down here. Started playing in the Twin Cities area. That was around 11 to 1300. Started doing pretty well up there. And then age 10 to 12, I think this is sort of like my chess prime in terms of just how much I loved the game, how much I was playing. I went back to my USCF records. I was playing like 3 weekend events some months, plus like Friday night club events. I mean, I was just playing chess nonstop. I really liked it. And I think that was kind of like maybe my highest level from, adjusted for age. And then like early high school, kind of, or end of middle school, I would say, hit a slump. Stalled at around 1800 for a while. And then in high school, I kind of picked it up a little bit more, joined the team. But if you look at this rating gain, it wasn't a ton. It was like 50 points throughout high school. I wasn't studying a lot. I did tie for first 3 times for the state high school title, which was kind of like really my biggest achievement, I think, in my chess career. But I wasn't completely focused on chess. I was definitely interested in a lot of other things. And then in college, I really just played for the college team, which was more informal events. And then I ran some like small events, just like in one of our cafeterias. But my rating kind of stayed stagnant. I was low 2100s. And then when I started my first job, I really just stopped playing chess altogether for a few years. No USCF events. And then around age 26, I started getting back into it, started coaching a bit. I was still kind of low 2100s. And then age 27, I decided, okay, I need to reach master. I've been 2100 for almost 10 years at that point. And master was something that I always thought sounded cool. I just Never quite had it in me to get there. And I met up with this player in town named Scott. And I kind of thought of Scott as like my coach or chess mentor. He was probably, you know, 2275 elo. I think at the time though his rating was 2200, but he was like, increasing every single event. He taught me a lot about chess studying, and even though we didn't have like a set study plan, he was really good at teaching me how to study. So we would go through grandmaster games of openings we played. We would go through like different traps and move order tricks in the opening. Really a lot of opening work, but not just in the sense of memorize these strings of moves, but really understanding deeply the positions and what players do out of those positions. And once I started working with Scott, we would do like a chess session every month on a Saturday or Sunday, and those would be like 5 hour, 6 hour sessions. Like we would just play chess and study, and that really helped me get to that 2200 level. So yeah, that's kind of the summary. Since then, I haven't gone up much, but I don't have any big goals right now to improve.
That's cool. What openings were you playing towards the end for your national master push? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I switched up my openings for this. I started playing one knight f3 in combination with one d4 and trying to find move order tricks based on what my opponents played. If I knew which opponents would be in an event, Scott and I would prep for them. And he was really good at preparation. So he would say, well, if your opponent plays the Grunfeld, let's do this specific move order. Let's get him into this type of position. He was really good at that stuff, and that's something I'd never even thought about before. So I started playing like one knight f3, played some double fianchetto stuff with white, some Catalan, and then as black, I picked up the Benko, and I had really good results right off the bat with the Benko. I had been playing the Slav and some more solid openings, and then I was also playing the Caro Khan, but I added in the Sicilian Taimanov. So kind of having those multiple options for both white and black, I think kept me flexible. And then learning some of these sort of move order tricks and nuances allowed me to try to make my opponents uncomfortable in the opening.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you switch your openings a lot throughout your chess career?
Not a ton. So like as black, I played 1e5 when I first started, and then I switched to Caro, and that didn't really change until the master push when I picked up the Sicilian. White, I've played 1e4 for most of my career, switched to 1d4 kind of in college, and then switched from d4 to Catalan. So really like 3 phases for each. Not switching a ton.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't even know if I ever like had this down. Never really knew your. Yeah, I know that you made that late, quote unquote late push for master at 27. But yeah, it's cool to see your ratings throughout the years. Interesting to see like the rating deflation too. Like 900 was kind of like the lower tier back when you were first starting, and now it's like 400, 500 is kind of normal.
Yeah, I looked at some of my games. I remember I was looking at a tournament where I was rated 1100, so it was probably like the beginning of this phase, and there were so many mistakes back and forth. I would have pegged it probably 400 points lower, like a 700 now. But I think what happened was the ratings were just a lot more condensed back then. A lot of kids weren't playing compared to now.
Oh, I'm sure. Cool to see a lot of kids playing.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Next question. Another one from Birdcell. It says, how important are different aspects of chess improvement?
And this is one, Jesse, I was thinking we could do together. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen sort of the tier system. I have some categories, some items down here, and then some different categories on how important these are for improvement. And these are alphabetical. So let's start with Blitz. Where would you put Blitz, Jesse?
Blitz, it's interesting because it really helps you. I feel like Blitz is more of a thermometer for where your rating is rather than something to improve your rating. But it helps me stay sharp tactically and get a bunch of reps in for openings and see what people are playing against my standard openings. So I would put Blitz probably in the B category. What do you think?
That's what I was thinking too.
Nice, got one.
And I think if your goal is to improve in blitz, you bump it up. But I think for a lot of players, they just want overall improvement or classical. So yeah, B sounds good. All right, what do you think about bullet?
Bullet. The only thing that is good for bullet is to reinforce openings. I'm gonna put it at. I mean, you're playing. I'll put it at C level.
Yeah, I was gonna say C or even D. I think C is fair though because you do want to play a lot. I think it's important to play somewhere between like 50 and 90% of your chess time should be playing games. So yeah, definitely keep playing. All right, classical.
Classical. Is that does that mean like over the board 60-minute games?
Yeah,
That's got to be super. That's the best way.
yeah, I agree with that. And classical helps improve your chess all the way down the chain. So getting good at classical helps improve your blitz, and especially for players that are, let's say, 1600, like a club level player, you want to improve your classical because that's going to really teach you the different strategies in the game. And then as you keep playing and improving, those become faster and faster. But if you're already 2300, classical probably isn't as important as playing, let's say, rapid and blitz because you already kind of know a lot of those ideas, but you actually want to improve your intuition. All right, what do you think about coaching? Having a coach?
Coach, coach, I would also put that in super.
Yeah, I was thinking super or maybe A. I would say super is good. Yeah, like if you have unlimited financial resources,
Hmm.
yeah, and a good coach, that'll help for sure. That'll be really valuable. All right, what about daily games?
Daily games? That's kind of tricky because when I play daily games, I either don't care about them and pitch a bunch of rating points, or I take them really seriously and try to improve. So it depends on the effort you put into it. Um, I would put it at an A, higher than Blitz, low classical. I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, and just to note, a lot of people don't know what daily games are. That's what chess.com calls them, but it's correspondence games. It's games that take 1 day per move or 2 days, 3 days per move. That's what a daily game is. So I think the cool thing with daily games, you can train any aspect of your chess with daily games. You can sort of guess the opening moves and then double check them and be allowed to use your opening book. Um, you can give yourself a timer, like I want to make each move in 10 seconds in all my daily games and just train your intuition. Or you could do the opposite. You could say, I want to spend at least 5 minutes on every single move and really train for classical without needing to have like a 2 hour window to play a classical game. So I think daily games have a lot of value if you use them the right way. All right, end games.
Endgames. I think this is a little dependent on your rating. Because if you're rated, I mean, we're going to touch on this in a little bit, I think. But if you're rated 4 or 500, don't worry about end games at all. If you're super low rated, it's in the D category. If you're making a push for grandmaster, it's probably in the super category because that's where a lot of the points are going to be won and lost. So I guess put it in the middle, right? Right at B.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And that's a question coming up. What end games do I need to know? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But Jesse's exactly right. As you improve, they become a lot more important. All right, what about grandmaster games?
I think same answer. If you're really new to the game, you're not going to get a whole lot from grandmaster games. But obviously, if you're trying to make a big master push or you're, pushing for 2000 or another rating goal, it becomes more important. Especially annotated GM games. If you try to come up with yourself, it's a little more difficult. I would say B or A. What do you think?
B or A? I'm going to go A. I think the reason I like A, and maybe we should say all master games, is because of the annotations. Like you said, if you have annotated games, they're really good to learn from at all levels. So I'm going to go with A. All right, openings. Again, this one's kind of like end games where you could say it depends on your rating. But overall, where would you put them?
Yeah, I think everyone wants it to be super because it's so fun to study openings, but it's really not a deciding factor in most games until you get quite high rated. I would maybe put it in. I mean, it's better than Bullet for sure. Probably, probably similar to endgames. Maybe like a little lower than endgames,
Yeah, I
like
actually kind
B
of want to
minus.
move. I kind of want to move Blitz up to the A minus. You good with that?
Sure.
Because I feel like Blitz is a little more important than doing your end games and openings if you're using it the right way. If you're analyzing each game and having a takeaway or two from them, Blitz can get you a ton of games in a short amount of time.
Agree.
All right,
This is my
playing.
first tier list, by the way. This is fun.
Me too.
Never done one before.
Same here. OTB.
That's got to be super,
Yeah, I agree.
super duper.
Especially again, if your goals are to improve as an OTB classical player, like you gotta play OTB and you gotta play classical. If your goals are to play Blitz online, not as important. Oh, Rapid. I really like Rapid.
Yep. Also got to be super. Great way to improve your chess.
Yeah, because the thing with Rapid, it's when you want to improve at something, it's always nice to try something that's like a little bit harder and a little bit easier than what you're doing. So, like, if you want to improve at classical games, it's beneficial to try Rapid because that helps you get used to having a little more time pressure. If you want to get better at Blitz, it's also better. It's also good to play a lot of Rapid because that helps you think deeper, and then you can slowly make those more intuitive processes in Blitz. So I think Rapid across the board is super valuable, and you can get a lot more games in than classical, so you get more takeaways, more review of your openings, on and on. Like, I love Rapid chess.
Yeah, one of my favorite chess events we did OTB was that rapid event. It must have been 2019 maybe, but that was a really fun event. I think I scored really well in it too. I had a good event. But yeah, rapid is super fun.
Yeah, I really like it. And now the top players are doing a lot more Rapid too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, game
So
analysis. So analyzing your own games.
it's either super or A. I would probably put it in the super category, especially for the slow chess.
Yeah, I think it's got to go up here. Strategy. Controversial.
Yeah, kind of depends what you mean by strategy. Just like positional chess, it's definitely very important, but I feel like playing is more important to really put those into practice. So I would probably put it at A or B. What do you think?
I'm gonna go with
Going B?
B. I think this category B is similar in that it depends on your rating, but in terms of the data, like the more and more data I look at, the more I realize these three things compete with each other for your time in chess. So if you have 7 hours a week to play chess or to work on your chess, maybe 5 of those hours are playing, and a half hour is analyzing, and a half hour is tactics. Well, that only leaves you another hour to do everything else. So they're
Hmm.
important, but at the same token, you don't want to, spend 5 hours a week reading your opening book when really that should be spent on other things. All right, study plan.
Study plan? If you don't necessarily need a study plan if you just want to sit down and do all the things in the super tier, but I feel like it helps keep you accountable, helps you know exactly kind of what to do each day without having to put a lot of thought into it. I'm gonna defer to Matt. What do you think on this one?
I was going to go A because I kind of agree with you. I don't think you have to have one, but I think you hit a point where it's definitely helpful to just have a plan and not focus your energy on what to do next.
And I feel like a lot of players get this analysis paralysis of what do I study? What book do I buy? Should I pick a new opening? And if you just want to like have it, have someone else do the work for you, national master who's also a statistician and loves diving through all the data, uh, Matt put together great study plans based on your rating and what kind of your goals. So we kind of have the answers for you if you don't want to go through the time to figure out what exactly you should be studying.
Yeah, and I will say too, like we have the premium study plans. And that's where you get like a 12-week guide. You get access to our Discord community. You get my support and weekly check-ins. You can ask me any questions anytime. But we also have free resources on our website where you can just go and kind of look at the percentages and see recommendations. And if you subscribe to our emails, we have like a study plan worksheet that's free, and you kind of get percentages and things like that. So you can definitely build your own study plan without spending any money. So we don't want to make you feel like you have to spend money to get advice.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of blog posts kind of around the study plans too about how much time you should be spending on openings, what end games you should know, books we recommend, that type of thing too. So you can go a long way for free. And we even have a blog post for free improvement resources. So if you don't want to spend money on chess improvement, there's plenty out there for free.
Yes. All right, let's move to tactics. This is a big one.
Tactics. I want to put it in super because for me it improves every aspect of my chess. So I feel like many games are won and lost just from tactical complications. So a lot of the times the tactically superior player is going to come away victorious. I will say super. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I think tactics, there's, drilling tactics puzzles, but there's also just retrying your mistakes from games. Oftentimes those are tactics that are deciding the games. So yeah, I would say super. In terms of time spent, I think I would always say spend more time playing games and analyzing your games than tactics, but you really can improve without doing some work on tactics. So yeah, super. All right, Twitch.
Twitch, if anything's going in D, it's got to be Twitch.
I agree.
The 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 thing with Twitch is that you need to be entertaining, and Blitz chess is just where it's most entertaining. A lot of the top guys don't do a good job of really explaining their thought process or doing anything instructive. So you're there kind of just for fun. What do you think?
I agree. I put it in D. I think if something has to go there, it's Twitch. Um, maybe you could argue Twitch is more valuable than Bullet, but I kind of doubt it because it's passive learning, but it's also those creators aren't necessarily giving you their most instructive content because, like Jesse said, they just need to be entertaining. So that brings us to YouTube, which is usually a little bit more planned out content than what you'd find on Twitch watching people live.
Yeah, I would put YouTube. Again, it kind of depends what you're watching. Um, One thing that I like to do when I'm learning a new opening or something like that is I'll go through YouTube channels I like John Bartholomew, Chess Explained, or Chess Network. They have a lot of games with the opening in the title, so you can see like common plans there. So if you use it right, you can get some good insights and stuff from um, well annotated games. So yeah, I think yeah, B or maybe even C somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking B or C as well. You can definitely find really instructive videos, but the thing you want to still do is don't make it completely passive learning. Try to, really think for yourself, ask questions, look things up if you don't understand it, guess the move, those kind of things. But yeah, YouTube is a great free resource too that you can learn anything in chess.
Yeah. All right. I think we spent a lot of time. Hopefully, we fully answered the important different aspects of chess improvement. That was my first ever tier list. That's great.
Same
Good
here.
job setting that up.
Thanks. Sorry. Next
All
question.
right. Yeah, another one from Indica. This was from our website, I believe. He emailed us. So what should we spend our money on? I'm kind of paraphrasing his question. But there's a lot of chess products out there. What really gives you the best bang for your buck?
Yeah, really good question. And I think he also mentioned that, he trusts us to be as honest as possible with this. So I should first mention that I do some work for chess.com. I'm a contractor for them. And I get the diamond level membership for free. So that's provided. And most of my time that I spend on chess websites is chess.com. So I have to say all that up front. But with that said, I'll be as honest as possible with these. So I kind of have three categories here. Completely free, around $10 a month or 10 US dollars a month, 120 a year, kind of medium range, and then $240 a year plus. That just kind of means chess isn't real, or money's not really a limit in terms of chess improvement. The nice thing about chess, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's actually like one of the cheapest hobbies you can find if you want it to be. It doesn't cost much to have a chessboard. It doesn't cost much to play online and improve. So let's start with the free category. I think at the free category, there's really two main sites to play on, chess.com and Lichess. There are other sites, but I think I would say focus on one of these two. In my opinion, you should try both and just see what you like. If you want to keep it completely free, I would say Lichess is the better option. What do you think on that, Jesse?
Yeah, chess.com and Lichess have most of the players, so I never have to wait more than like 3 seconds to find a match. There's like 500,000 people playing at chess.com like at any given moment. Lichess, everything is completely free, but they don't have a whole lot for improvement resources outside of their tactics. So that's where it's a little limited. Chess.com, you can do lessons, you can do tactics trainer. So one or the other, I'd say just pick one. For most people, either one is going to be just fine. It's going to do everything you want. So
or both. Like
yeah, or
you play quite a bit on both, and I have in the past too. And
yeah, I play on both. I like them both. So I really don't have much of a preference one way or the other, just to sit down and play a game of chess.
yeah, I can tell you, like, if you are willing to pay $5 a month, which is the chess.com gold membership, I think chess.com is better in almost every way in terms of like chess improvement. But if you want a site where you just go in and it's like 2 clicks to start a game and it's quick interface, Lichess is pretty smooth for that. So I will mention for playing in the free category, I think playing some OTB is valuable. That's over the board chess. And free OTB means just finding people to, meet up with at cafes, maybe a local club that doesn't cost any money to just go and play, but kind of get experience playing with the physical pieces. Second, I would say Lichess because it's free. And third, chess.com. It does have ads. And then for game analysis, kind of similar to playing. Lichess, you can review every game for free. Chess.com, if you're on a free account, you can only do one game report per day. But if you have the gold membership over here, I think chess.com is more valuable than a free Lichess because you get a better game analysis and it's unlimited. Another thing I'll mention with the playing, I think chess.com has the most accurate ratings online. So we do rating comparisons on our website, and chess.com is very close to OTB ratings. So I think it really gives you a true guide of where your skill level is at. A 1600 on chess.com is what historically a 1600 has always been for the most part. Whereas on Lichess, there might be like a 200 point difference where you're 200 points higher rated on Lichess. And then also, a lot of players nowadays are concerned about cheating. So since the pandemic started, a lot of people have switched to online chess only. And there's been more money involved with online chess. And I can tell you that chess.com does an awesome job catching cheaters. Everyone who's reported gets looked at. And I think, I have full trust that chess.com does a good job with those things. Lichess, I don't have as much experience with their system, but pretty much every reason I can think of, I do prefer chess.com once you're on that gold tier.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that chess.com is second to none for cheat detection. They have a very sophisticated staff there and lots of resources that they put into catching cheaters. So if that's something like you don't want to play cheaters, chess.com is great for that.
Yeah. Then let's go to tactics. So I think for free, Chess Tempo has a large database of tactics that you can use for free. Lichess also has tactics that you can use for free. I don't like the Lichess tactics as much, but I will admit that I have not used them in probably over a year. But I have read other people's comments that they're not as big of fans as Lichess tactics.
Yeah, the chess tempo tactics I feel like are very strong. And another good thing about chess tempo is that it does try to estimate your rating based on the problems you're getting right and wrong. In Lichess, you kind of just get a puzzle rating that's going to be a lot higher than your normal rating. But chess tempo is pretty closely aligned with what you would be over the board, give or take a couple hundred points.
Yeah, and I think if you go up to the gold tier, chess.com or higher, you do get Puzzle Rush, you get Puzzle Battles, and you get unlimited tactics, I believe, at the gold level. In the tactics puzzles at chess.com, they're all based on real games, which I think is also true of Chess Tempo, but they also do a good job checking those puzzles and weeding out the bad ones. So they look for puzzles that are satisfying for the users and don't have like kind of weird solutions. So I think chess.com has the best tactics if you're willing to pay. But one thing I will add to that is if you want to do the woodpecker method, which is something we do recommend in our study plans, on Chess Tempo you can create kind of like custom sets of puzzles. You do have to pay for their $20 a year plan to do that, but you can create custom sets of puzzles and do the woodpecker method. And on Chessable, you can actually use the woodpecker method on the woodpecker course itself. So I think that's also a good option, but it's kind of up to you, I'd say, out of those three, which one you want to do.
Yeah, and another cool thing about the Lichess tactics, going back to Lichess, is you can go back and review the game that the tactic comes from and see like whether the person found it or what led to that position. So that's another cool thing too.
Yeah, that is nice. And books are always good too. I think the hard thing with books is it's not as quick to go through your tactics as all these online resources. So books aren't really even in my top three. Let's go to
D tier.
Yeah.
D tier for tactics.
Right. Let's go to strategy. YouTube is free. Same with endgames. YouTube is good. Once you get into that level where you're okay buying like a book or two, I think the strategy books are super valuable. And I really like the Yusupov series we recommended in a lot of our study plans. And chess.com lessons are probably the best strategy resource on the internet. You do have to have one of the premium memberships, but what they do is they have videos, and they're all pretty recent. They have like a team of video producers. I know a couple of the guys that do them, and they have quizzes at the end of each lesson. So I really think, having a book or the access to chess.com lessons will get you everything you need for strategy, and at a price that's, $20 a year or something. Yeah, pretty cheap. Endgames.
Yeah, I feel like the chess.com lessons are like chess's best kept secret. I've said this so many times is they don't advertise them like they should. But yeah, they're really good. You can find one specific to your openings and everything too. So I like them. All the ones that I've done have been really good. Jeremy Silman has a great strategy section of just like chess strategy, limiting pieces. It's really high quality.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite chess teacher. Him and Yusupov, because I should put in here too, Reassess Your Chess is a really good strategy book by Silman. And then if we go to endgames, I think you just need one endgame book for life. And we have a blog post on this. It's the top 3 endgame books, but it should be either Silman's Reassess Your Chess, Silman's Endgame Course, 100 Endgames You Must Know, or Dvorsky's Endgame Manual. One of those 3 books, I think, is the only endgame book you need, because that'll teach you sort of the theoretical endgames that you need to know. And then when it comes to the practical endgames, I think you should get that experience by playing games with increment and playing classical games. Like, make yourself go into endgames and learn how to play them.
Yeah. Either one or any one of those books is good. I think that the Silman one may be a little more practical for people because it breaks it down by rating level, so you don't get the whole strategy thrown at you. You get like more better chunks, I guess, to focus on.
Yeah, Silman's my top choice there.
Yeah.
Openings are tough at the free level. You can look at some opening explorers. You can look at YouTube, and I think YouTube is probably the best resource, especially if you find like a instructor that kind of talks through the ideas of the openings. But once you get to this next tier, chess.com lessons has really good opening lessons with kind of the quizzes at the end. There's the Everyman Chess Move by Move series, which is awesome because they focus on game review and they highlight key points and they ask you questions in the book. And then I have to do a little plug for our repertoire. the Carol Khan. I think it has a good balance of not going too deep because, as we talked about in the study tiers, you don't want to spend hours and hours a week on openings, maybe not even hours and hours a month. So that's something where if you just, watch like a 1 hour, 45-minute video once a week, every other week, and then check your notes after each game, that's plenty. Until you get to like 18, 19, 1900, 2000, then you can start to focus a little bit more on openings. And then here in the 240 plus category, I have Chessable Be Careful. Jesse, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, I message Matt like every week, like, have you ever played the Budapest? There's this new repertoire in Chessable, or have you ever played, what do you think of the Trompowsky? Like all these different repertoires. He's talking me off the ledge of spending like half my salary on opening books. Um, but the Chessable opening repertoires are very high quality. So I have my whole D4 repertoire as white and D4 repertoire against white from Chessable, and they do a really good job. So if you want to buy a book or two, I think that's great. I personally don't get the videos because I like to read them. I read the text, I should say, just because the ideas stick with me a little more. So that's a way you could save a little money rather than getting the video upgrade. Um, yeah, so don't go crazy, especially depending on your level. But a lot of the books that come out of Chessable are very high quality.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the quality is there. But when it comes to both Chessable and a lot of opening books, they can go really deep for club level players.
Hmm.
So that's kind of part of why I'm saying be careful as well. Like, let's say you buy a book that has 1,000 lines or 2,000 lines. That's a lot of lines to be learning, and you need someone to tell you which lines are actually important to know. How deep should I actually be going? So there's like a lot of options in Chessable, and there are some opening books like the Move by Move series that are a little more practical than others. But just be careful. Like, make sure you're not spending so much time on openings that you don't have time to do the other activities in your week.
Yeah, I would say aim for studying about 100 to 200 line repertoires. There are some of the lifetime repertoires on Chessable that will go way into the weeds. So there's books with 2,000 opening lines that you can study. If you decide to go that route, they have a quick starter section on most of those, and that will teach you all you need to know. Just do the quick starter and don't go into the weeds unless you're like for some reason you really want to go into it.
And what you can do is you can add lines as you encounter them. So start small. Start with the quick starter, and then as you see a line, maybe you go in and learn that variation. Like, oh, this one's I've seen over the board or I've seen in a blitz game. Go learn it and add that to your training, or go check it in the book.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then a couple other things I added at this top tier, and you'll notice like there's not a lot in this last column. You can go pretty far at 120 a year, maybe even if that's up to like a $200 a year range. So outside of those things in this last column, I do think adding a coach is beneficial. Like in our study tiers tab, we talked about this. You don't have to have a coach, and I don't think a coach helps that much more than what you can get without a coach if you're very structured about how you improve your chess. But a coach can provide you that guidance, and they can help like very quickly hone in on your weaknesses. And then also I would say OTB chess. Like, play in big tournaments, get a feel for that. You'll have to pay entry fees. You might have to, stay at a hotel or two or Airbnb, whatever. But it's really a great experience, and it's the best way to play slow chess is OTB.
Yeah, yeah. I've only played in a few events, but I always come away feeling much sharper after a big OTB event.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I
All
think
right,
that's
so
all I have for the tiers, unless you want to add anything.
no, I was gonna say, hopefully we answered your question. That's always it was a very good question. I think that's probably the best question we got is where should we spend our money to, uh, get better at chess? All right, last one comes from Eric. I can't remember if this one must have been from an email. So he asks, what are the essential theoretical endgames that need to be memorized? So for example, the Philidor Lucina position.
I did put those two on the list. So
Yeah, good.
I think the Stillman Endgame course is the best book for this because it, like Jesse said, it has chapters based on your skill level. And if all you do is just follow along and read one chapter every time you reach that next rating range, I think that's perfect. And you can just kind of review the quizzes every so often and make sure you still understand them. But if I were to boil it down to the most important one, so even a smaller set than what Silman says, this is what I would recommend. So if you're a brand new player or in kind of what we call the novice range, 5 basic checkmates. And we have YouTube videos on these, but it's how to checkmate with a queen, a rook, in any combination. Queen, 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 rook, 2 rooks. From the 800 to 1100 range, I think you gotta get your king and pawn endgames down. When is a king and a pawn against a king a win? And when is it a draw? And sort of learning the tricks and maybe how to get your opponent into the wrong result out of those. Opposition, you have to know. And then also it's nice to be at least familiar with like how can a queen beat a bishop or how can a queen beat a knight. Just so that if you stumble into that, you still know it's a win and how to convert. 1100 to 1400, I think you got to know king and multiple pawns. So like king and 3 against king and 2, or king and pawns with pawns on both flanks. There's a technique in Silman that they call fox in the chicken coop, or maybe you have an extra pawn on one side. You trade down all the pawns on that side and then run your king to the other side of the board. Grab those pawns and then promote. So those kind of techniques I think you really got to know there. Anything you would add up to 1400, Jesse?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think 1400 is a good start to start learning something more than the basic, opposition, how to checkmate with king and queen, that type of thing.
Yeah, so I think the next range, we could probably add a lot more to this section, the 1400 all the way to 2000. But I think these are the critical ones you have to know. You have to know Lucina and Philidor. That's where you have a rook and 1 pawn against a rook. The Lucina is the offensive position where your king is in front of the pawn and the opponent's king is kind of off to the side. And the Philidor is when you're defending that position, you don't have the pawn. Your king and rook are both in front of the opponent's pawn, preventing it from queening, and how to draw that. I think those are important to know. Not only just if they happen in your games, but also how to, let's say, threaten to get into one of those positions based on the scenario and avoid your opponent getting into those positions based on the scenario. So sometimes just knowing them is better than actually, or as important, I should say, as being able to execute them. And then queen versus pawn, I think, is really important too. 2000 plus. This gets tricky, but I think it's rook and multiple pawns you have to know. So like rook and 4 against rook and 3, or rook and pawns with pawns on both sides of the board. And a lot of these I think just come with practice. As you and your opponents make less and less mistakes, you find that you have to convert these rook and pawn endgames constantly. And practical endgames can also mean just games that you play in your game, or endgames that you play in your games and then reviewing them afterwards with the computer or with a friend or a coach, and really just kind of working on the technique.
Yeah, so hopefully this gives you a good idea. Endgames are tricky. Anytime anytime you're in one of these theoretical endgames, it's very likely a decisive result. So one move can cost you a full point, or take you from a win to a loss very quickly. So as you improve your rating, I think they become more important. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And there's a book called Amateur to IM, and they talk a lot about endgames, and it's really important at that level, right? You trying to get to IM, you got to work on your endgames because there's just less mistakes being made in the middle game.
Yeah. All right, well, that does it for our questions. So thanks to everyone who asked us, reached out on Discord or email or the website. Yeah, if there's anything else that you want Matt or I to answer, just comment below or reach out via chessgoals.com. Anything else you want to say, Matt?
No, I think these were great questions. This was a lot of fun to do, Jesse. Thanks for organizing it. Thanks, everyone, for submitting these questions. And if you like the video, click the thumbs up. and click the subscribe for more content, and we'll throw timestamps and links in the description below. And also, there's a part 1 to this, which was the surprise questions that you should check out as well. All right, thanks, Jesse, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks.